I think you have to learn, if you're going to do well in corporate, you literally have to learn diplomacy. Right?
Man.
Even when because many a times, the reason why people scream a lot, they are not being understood. But if you position yourself as that counselor
who understands,
where you listen, you see,
truly
you listen, you're listening, they're screaming and you whatever they are doing, you become that voice of reason in any space. So that's why it's important that don't join the party, because if you join the party, you're not going to solve everything. So you just have to be saying you are the one who is more reasonable.
And diplomacy is really not a sign of weakness. I think it's something that we just need to understand, because sometimes it just comes across like maybe it's a form of weakness, or it's a form of admitting guilt, or a form of I don't know. So I think we just need to understand that it's actually a key thing. It's actually a flex, like we would say it. But
it is. And I think the biggest challenge with people who struggle with this, especially with organizational politics, they always want to be right. You don't have to always be right. You don't
even
always
when
have
you're right.
Even when you're right. You have, it's not worth it. You see, I think it will be important for someone to watch all the previous episodes that we have done. I feel like you can't just come from nowhere. That's one of the things that I'm saying.
What I'm about to say.
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Uncut with Tate. I hope you guys are doing well. And here I'm with my co-pilot. Welcome, Pals, to the show.
Thank you.
And I also have the crew behind the crew.
Welcome, crew.
Yes, thank you so much. You know, as a labor lawyer who has spent so much time in the field, I've noted that there are 4 reoccurring themes that I've seen, you know, in terms of why people have issues and why are people dismissed in the workplace, and with many consultations that we have done. And I think without any order of importance, I've seen that these 4 issues, they are always reoccurring. Number 1, it's an issue of organizational politics. You know, it's very high in the workplace. Number 2, the issue of racial prejudices are very high. Number 3 is when someone has just done something bad, you know, when it's a performance issue or you have done a misconduct issue and the company has no, choice but to exercise, the law. And the 4th one is when someone feels threatened by your capabilities and they just want to cut your legs. And I think today I wanted us to really, unpack this issue of, organizational politics. And I think it's really, really the main reason. I think 90% of the consultations that we do have, you will find that the real reason why people have issues, that why they are being dismissed, why they are going through performance, or even sometimes, retrenchment, in disguise.
That is so true.
Because of, organizational politics.
So basically, those other 3 factors sometimes even stem from organizational politics then?
Yes, they stem from organizational politics. That's where,
powerful.
You just in an organization and someone just doesn't like you. And I think when I try, because it has been a cause of concern, as a lawyer, and I've seen how it does to people, these issues in the workplace, they really, really mess up a lot of young people. And I've seen that when I look even the way the charges are formulated, if they are being called to go to a disciplinary hearing or whatever issue of performance, I've seen that many a times you will find that there is a lack of emotional intelligence in the part of the employee many a times. And I've really seen that emotional intelligence is a big flex if you really want to do well. Because I think most of the clients that even when you interact them, when you speak to them, you find that they have this attitude of saying that they know. And they can't be told. So, and when you have that attitude in the workplace, it's very difficult for you to cope.
Sure.
You know, because the truth of the matter is there are people who know better than you. And
They'll always be
they will always be there. So you will find that, you know, it's really something that a lot of young people, you know, not trying to have any gender issues, but I'm just gonna say from,
let's talk demographics.
You know, from the stats, a lot of young people within their 30s, especially ladies, they struggle with this thing.
Sure.
And you will find that they end up, most of them in mental psychiatric institutions because it messes them up. And
so sad.
And they are struggling. They are really, really struggling to cope in corporate. And it's just sad to see that, you know, that in their first few years as they climb up the ladder, they are already
just crumbles down.
It crumbles.
Yeah.
You know, most of the consultations that we have, I'm always having a packet of tissues. You know, people are crying, and you can really tell that if one
Stripes is a psychologist.
So if one had really, you know, was taught about emotional intelligence,
that's so true.
I think it would have really, really helped them to navigate a lot of things.
I don't understand why. I don't know, is the only way you can learn emotional intelligence practically or through experience? I don't understand why we don't get taught that in varsity. I mean, that's the main thing. It should have been taught.
It should literally be a module. Because at this point, I think all corporates, you know, the feedback has gone back. I mean, you see it in every sphere, health, everything. Sure. The feedback has gone back that, you know, some people struggle in corporate and mentally so.
Yeah.
Yes.
But
But
we haven't, this is if we haven't closed the loop to say, okay, better prepare them better from university to the time.
That's right.
But
I think
I have a question.
Yeah.
You can go ahead.
Yeah, I think it should be a mandatory thing.
Yeah.
I think even in their resume, even corporates, when they are looking for someone, they must look at someone who has
been trained.
I know they are big on IQ, so even most probably when you're going through interviews, they want to test your IQ. But even I was actually looking at some Harvard reviews, I think some years back. I think they were saying that even great leaders, one of the things that they have seen, 90% of great leaders, according to the Harvard Business Review, is they see that they have a high level of emotional intelligence. I think IQ is now overrated. EQ is the biggest thing.
And I think it also stems from the fact that, I mean, we're moving towards a world that won't rely so much on human intelligence.
That's so true. That's right.
Machines doing everything.
Our superpower, emotional intelligence becomes a strength.
Because you can't train, you know, a machine to conflict manage something.
The way a human would.
But, you know, just before we even get so much into the depth of it, I wanted to ask Tate, for the average person, we've heard of emotional intelligence, we've heard of it, EQ, you know, but trying to define it and bring it home to the average listener, graduate or just about to be promoted for management, what is emotional intelligence?
I think the simple definition of emotional intelligence is your ability to manage your emotions and also have an understanding right, of others' emotions, right, and also have an ability to influence. I mean, you have to be someone who is able to manage. I like the word manage.
That's the keyword.
Because it's telling you that if they are not managed, they can go wild. I think in other terms, they'll be talking about harnessing your emotions.
That's a good one. And the thing is, I think we've always thought about it, or maybe let me talk about myself or for myself. Like for the longest of times, I just felt like it was managing my emotions only, harnessing my emotions only, how I show up, how I think about things, how I treat other people and whatnot, and almost forgot or wasn't aware that I also have the responsibility to be aware of the emotions of people around me and also manage them and influence them so they can all work well together. Right? So,
and I think, you know what, if you don't have the ability, I really, really agree with you. If you don't have the ability to manage other people's emotions, you will find that, because I feel like emotions are like a network, right?
Yeah,
you can try and manage yours, but they always overlap to others.
Yeah.
So you have, for you to be wholesome, to be in a proper mental state, you have to also make sure that you manage others so that they also don't affect you.
This makes so much sense, because you find good people that are actually good people going through issues like this, organizational politics, and you're like, how did you get involved in all of this?
That's correct.
But
so
that's
you
because
actually
you just
have
managed
to.
yourself.
And the biggest challenge is most people know how to manage their emotions, but they don't know how to influence their emotions. And how do you influence? Not like you're playing them on your strings, It's by the things that you do
this
that
is so
allows
good.
those people to also for their emotions to be manipulated for your favor.
Manipulated in a good way.
In a good way. In a good way. Thanks for saying that.
I guess what I'm getting is basically understanding what role you have to play in what's happening in a room.
Yes.
So how you can either positively contribute or negatively contribute, but you have to know the state of what you're dealing with.
Yes.
That's right.
So I think it's very important. And I think one thing that I just want to, just putting it out there. Our generation, this generation, the 80s, the 90s, we
Did you just give away your age?
we have this issue, and I just see, because I get to have the opportunity of sitting with people. Even the way they talk, even if a client comes with their mom, their mom is there for emotional support. You can tell the way they are already trying to command and tell their mom what to do, because I think it stems from home, where you come, where you are just everything is about you, because that's where
our
start
generation
having issues, because everything is about you and you are always right. People with their low emotional intelligence, they think they are always right, because mom, their highest authority in their life, that's their parents. They
override them.
They override them. So you are coming with that attitude to a corporate, to someone who knows, someone who has authority, and you think everyone is just going to treat you like Cinderella, like how everyone treats you at home. And I mean, for you, I think many a times it has helped you because your character was strong. It has helped you to achieve university and to do stuff that you have done. But there is a limit to a certain extent. So I think that's the challenge. So you then see that even the way some of the clients treat us, even when you're trying to tell them even the term in law, they have this understanding that they think they know. They are already telling you, but and
you're the lawyer.
You just that's why they let you go, because you don't have boundaries in the things that you do.
I'm not sure if I'm pushing it, but because you brought this up, I just feel like it's important, because sometimes when you understand where things come from, it's easier to recognize them in yourself and understand how to fix them. And I feel like you brought a very important point. I mean, I personally can't talk for maybe other races or cultures or whatnot that I didn't grow up in, but for young, like what you're saying, 80s, 90s, young black women, young black men, it was a situation, especially in South Africa, where you found you are the first graduate, you are the first one with a proper corporate job, and life has really become about you at home, right? And so we bring that, like we are the it thing at home, and I'm bringing that to corporate, and I want to be that, and I want to override authority. I'm the one who pays the bills for my family, everything. So everything, the buck stops with me, basically.
And so, I think also, Pastor Peter, Palesa, just to add on that, I think we don't know how much of a voice that dynamic gives us. And sometimes so prematurely.
Prematurely.
You literally become the CEO in the
yes.
room at home.
Yes.
The boss and and it's not because somebody is actually saying.
No one is saying it.
No one is saying you're the boss. Just the dynamic.
Yeah.
You are the boss, and that money creates. And then now, but we can't now translate. And how do I deal with my peers? But also, to be honest, how do I even deal with my parents? Because that's not correct.
It's not.
The fact that we then treat them that way. It's not right.
Yeah. So I think that's the challenge. I think I've noticed, especially in our African culture, you find those are the dynamics. I think some of them have also assumed responsibility at a young age. So mentally, many a times you might not be even being noticing. That's the energy that you're exuding, you're bringing into the workplace.
Because I've heard a lot of things said about that energy. People will be talking about the angry black woman syndrome, but people just don't understand where it comes from. And sometimes I think we just bash it, not knowing where it comes from. Yes. But at the same time, we need to recognize it and find a way to correct it.
We have to, because
I completely agree.
Where you've almost been set up to be this character, because of everything that life has thrown at you. No, I get it.
And so now you present yourself in corporate as that, and unaware of how it comes across to everybody else. So now you're at this table, you're meant to be cooperating with your teammates, whatever it may be. And now you come across as someone who's emotionally,
not intelligent.
I think you're right, and I think one thing I really want to labor on a point. When you go to work or any organization, have this understanding that I do not know.
Sure.
Yeah, you don't know everything.
At least I do not know everything.
And I'm willing to learn.
Yeah.
I think when you place yourself in that manner, because guys, it becomes an issue, especially if you're to ask where does, because even when I'm looking at a charge sheet, I want to see, because normally when I look at a charge sheet, there are allegations. So what we tend then to do to the client to say, can you send us a statement of events?
Sure.
When did everything start?
Yeah.
It comes with this attitude of saying, I know. And when you are given correction. Because when you are...
So there might be stuff that are not written on the charge sheet, but when you get that, they will not talk about the fact that you gave them attitude when they were correcting. It starts with that attitude of saying you have someone senior and they are trying to highlight a certain issue. They're starting to highlight a certain concern. But the way you respond, because you are used to respond to the highest authority at home, that's your parents or your grandmother. Most of them, they grew up with their grandmothers. They can tell their grandmother anything that they want. So that's where those issues they start. That's why I was saying it's best for you to position yourself that I'm here to learn. The degree, we put it aside. Yes, the degree made me to come to this place. Yeah. But I'm like a first year, I'm like a rookie here. Let me be willing to learn. I think mentally. It doesn't matter at what level?
Doesn't matter at what level. Mentally, it puts you in a right place to be able to learn. When you are corrected, you don't take things personally, because that's the thing with emotional intelligence.
It's not taking things.
You don't enter with heart.
Don't internalize.
Don't internalize.
Don't enter with heart.
Don't enter with heart.
So why then do we feel we are being put in a situation where you have to prove yourself? Where does that come from? Because I think part of what makes us struggle to approach either work, and in any level, I can imagine the higher up, the worse it gets. Because you can feel like, okay, it's okay to be a clueless graduate, but the more I go up the ranks, then it starts to look awkward. And I'm wondering, at what point, what brought us to this place where we aren't comfortable to assume that role, or what culture have we built? What am I asking? What culture have we built that has created an environment where people feel the need to prove themselves? And because of that, they are not going to take a back foot of anything. Because next thing I'll be the 007 of this place. I'll be the dummy of this place. And so where and I'm sorry to say this, but I've taken a personal note. It's very cultural. Because when you deal with colleagues of other nations, particularly high-ups, the West, Very different.
It's
they don't seem to have that desperation to prove themselves. They don't seem to be insecure. They are happy. An exec can come in and say, guys, I don't know what on earth is happening.
And it's fine.
Yes, and they are so comfortable.
And no one will even think they don't know anything.
No one thinks any less of them. Nobody looks at them in a funny way. But somehow subconsciously you think that and I don't know whether, culturally from where we stem in, we feel like we can't do what they do and get away with it. Hence, Tate, some of these things that we've come up with to say you have to work twice as hard to have half of what they have, either from a woman to a man or a black to other race, some sort of comparison. How can we change that? This generation.
It's a tricky one.
It's tricky.
It has a lot. I think it has a lot of things into play because also race also comes into play. We can't take away the fact that racial prejudices are there.
It's a real thing.
It's a real thing. So you have to be twice as tall. You have to work as hard because some people have had it easy. So my issue is, I think definitely you can do that, but your mental disposition is very important, right? Yeah. The challenge is we end up being bitter in that space, and even in places where we are supposed to get help, we end up not getting help because we've put ourselves in a space where we think we know, and the fact that we know, we are going to work twice as hard, and then if that recognition does not come,
it's an
bitterness.
Issue.
You see. So I don't have a problem with someone who understands
what they're doing,
what they are doing, and they also even if they face any prejudice, but there's a way we do it that doesn't affect us, because at the end of the day, many a times people who are bitter, who have strife, they never make it.
No one wants to work with you.
No one wants to work around you. So that's why you find we struggle then to go into those senior positions. I've seen even the way...
Even though you're amazing.
You're amazing.
At your job.
Like amazing. You can do the job.
I mean, I even listen to some of the recordings. Even when you look at some of the evidence, you will find that these young people are the ones who are very emotional. But the principal, the principal will be so calm.
Sure.
And they'll be saying whatever they say.
Clearly.
And when you look,
no emotions.
No emotions. They've developed their emotions. And if you have noticed, if you have interacted, amongst CEOs, one thing you find about them, they control their emotions at a high level.
Very controlled.
You can literally shout at them,
and
they won't respond.
I literally, this new place that I just moved to now, I compared the head of that BU with my previous CEO. Similar. Even though they're so careful with their words, even no matter the room is blowing up, they have a way of taming everything and making everybody feel comfortable. And they know how to tame not only their emotions, but the room's emotions.
But that's emotional intelligence.
That is emotional intelligence.
They went to the same school. Even the words they choose, Tate, they are so careful with their words.
And that's why many people say, I work so hard, but I'm not part of the executive. The thing is, at that level, they just don't want drama. They don't want drama. And people choose people who don't have drama.
If you have drama,
you can be so good.
At that level, there are 100 other people who can do the same thing that you're doing that are at your level. So it stops being about, I'm so amazing.
Special skill. So then, speaking of that then, I'm thinking of emotional responses to what Tate's saying about drama. You're now in this culture, so there's various work cultures. You're in a culture where it's very plausible to walk into a screaming match and it's normal. You can find yourself into a screaming match, or you're dealing with very abrasive characters. But now you're trying to be the more emotionally intelligent person, right? So you stand out from the room. How do you, because I think the temptation is you end up doing exactly what they're doing so you can communicate your point across or whatever the case may be, so you can be part of the crew or whatever. But how do you respond? What are some of the emotional responses in those situations that help you equip that muscle in you to come out on top?
I think you should not change. I think you should be consistent, intentional about working with people. Especially if you are someone who knows how to control your emotions, it's easy for you to get buy-ins, even with the most abrasive of people, because they know
see you as reasonable.
They see you as the reasonable person in the room. You don't raise your voice, even if they scream at you. You respond with a soft answer. There's no issues. You are able to deal with them in a very cordial manner. I think you have to learn, if you're going to do well in corporate, you literally have to learn diplomacy. Right? Man. Even when because many a times, the reason why people scream a lot, they are not being understood. But if you position yourself as that counselor
who understands,
where you listen, you see,
truly
you listen, you are listening, they're screaming and whatever they are doing, you become that voice of reason in any space. So that's why it's important that don't join the party, because if you join the party, you're not going to solve everything. So
that's a temptation, right? You want to go to town with them.
Yes.
Go to town.
So you just have to be saying you are the one who is more reasonable.
And diplomacy is really not a sign of weakness. I think it's something that we just need to understand, because sometimes it just comes across like maybe it's a form of weakness, or it's a form of admitting guilt, or a form of I don't know. So I think we just need to understand that it's actually a key thing. It's actually a flex, like we would say it. But
it is, and I think the biggest challenge with people who struggle with this, especially with organizational politics, they always want to be right. You don't have to always be right. You don't
even
always
when you're right.
Even when you're right, you have. It's not worth it.
That's a hard one to learn.
You see, but people in the workplace now, when they are arguing, most of the times they are arguing, and emotional intelligence tells you when to argue and when not to argue. For example, you will find someone, their boss is speaking something in a meeting, and you are talking. Or, and you're arguing
take them
with your
on
boss.
right there.
You want to take on your boss
right there, now,
in front of other subordinates, right there. That is it doesn't matter whether the numbers are wrong. But you will find clients, no, I know the numbers. I proved them. I was able to prove them. I was right. It's not about winning.
And you could have sent across the same message in a different way and would have been accepted.
And in a different time.
Yeah, at a different time.
Yeah. I like what
so
you're saying.
You could have taken it off after that with your boss, like, okay, I looked at you said this, I looked at this, what do you think of the way I approached it? Was it okay? Our numbers are a bit different. It would have been an accepted message. So sending the message across is not the problem. It's how you do it. It's the tone. It's the timing. It's all of that. So,
especially in meetings. You see, I've seen meetings, these work meetings. They are one of the biggest issues that people have. Let's learn in meetings. Agree to disagree. You should have that understanding. You might, especially these guys who went, they did maths and whatever.
He's now talking to us.
Guys, you might see your manager does not understand. You have done, the numbers. Maybe they didn't do,
Go for it.
They just finished with the abacus, They didn't go far, Just agree with them. And you find a right time when the tempers are cooled. Because in that moment, the leadership is trying to, stamp their authority. But if you now take advantage of that moment to try and embarrass them, they are going to use
even when
powers.
you're not trying to embarrass.
Even when you're not trying, they are going to use their powers, to also get back at you. So that's why it's important that timing is key. Emotional people, they are good with timing.
Where you know that you may be right, but you don't always have to be right.
You don't have to be right.
And nothing's gonna burn.
Nothing's gonna burn.
No matter how urgent you think those numbers are,
it's not gonna burn.
You see, it's not gonna. And I've noticed I've had clients where the client or the employer had done something wrong.
Genuinely
something wrong. And then, but because the manager is of a very senior level, and obviously when at that level they are way senior, they are like a director. So sometimes
not even line
you
manager.
understand that it's pride that is kicking in, and it can be very difficult for that director to come and say,
you're
I'm
right.
sorry. It's similar to when you are growing up with your parents.
You
know that even when they've when you are wrong, right, and they are wrong, takes a lot for them to come. They might not even come and apologize.
You'll see them
in another way, like by something new.
Aren't you hungry?
Yeah, aren't you hungry?
It's only in corporate. So this client, then, one of the managers organized to say, okay, let's have a meeting. We understand that you have done wrong. Let's just apologize to one another.
Yeah. So they're trying to show you what they're trying to do.
In corporate, there's what they call mediation.
Yeah.
What they call mediation. To try and mediate, and we settle our disputes. We are not saying you are right. We are not saying you are wrong. Let bygones be bygones, and let's move on. Which then they go to that meeting and they're expecting a reconciliation. They're expecting an apology. What the client does? She does not apologize. She actually takes it even worse. She starts, naming and shaming and saying you guys are wrong and all kinds of things. Was the client done wrong? She was.
Was she right? Yes, she was.
Was it the appropriate thing to do?
No,
it wasn't. That's what we call emotional intelligence. She could have just said, let bygones be bygones. But what happens now? They then say that no, she's problematic. Let's use the law.
Opportunity.
And the thing is, you are all going to make a mistake. You're going to make a mistake.
There's no way you're not going to make a mistake somewhere, somehow.
You're going to make a mistake, and they're going to pounce on you. Because when you were required to be reasonable, you were not required to be reasonable. You were not being willing to be reasonable.
So that's a very good point, that you always want to be the reasonable party in the spaces, because when the tides turn, you'll have people on your side.
Yeah.
Because when you set yourself up on this pedestal, then people are very happy to see you fall. Very happy.
We even there's a term for it in corporate, how the mighty have fallen.
Mighty have fallen. And you know what? The truth of the thing.
That's so sad. Corporate is a funny place.
It's a world on its own.
The bargaining power is not the same. The bargaining power is not the same.
That's so true.
So you need to understand that emotional intelligence tells you that the bargaining power is not the same. You are not at that level. The company, if they want to make your life difficult,
they can. It's like sometimes even you might feel like maybe these episodes that we're doing, we're always focusing on the employee side, how you should fix yourself, whatnot. But that's the reality of life.
If you want to get paid.
If you want to, like you just need to understand.
It's not your company.
It's not your company. So we're not trying to say it's only employees who are wrong, but we're trying to say the person that has to change is you because of the bargaining power.